Okay, guys, so it's Mrs. Malott. We are starting Phlebotomy Chapter 2 today. Just a refresher, what we went over yesterday was the different people who work in the lab, what their education requirements were, and some of the different job things that they do as far as functions in their job. Today, we're starting Chapter 2, which is all about the different departments in the laboratory itself. So the first department is histology. If you remember back to your medical terminology, histo means tissue. And so this is the department that processes and stains all the different tissues that are removed during surgery. And they get them ready, and then the pathologist will look at them, maybe for signs of cancer or abnormal cells or something like that. Sometimes it's closely linked with, and so sometimes it's in the same area as cytology. And again, thinking back to medical terminology, cytoma and cell. So this is when they prepare tissues and body fluids to look for at the cells for signs of disease like cancer. So for instance, the common test that is performed in this department is a pap smear, where they put a speculum into a woman's vagina, scrape some cells off of her cervix, and then look at those cells under the microscope to see if there's any signs that the woman has cervical cancer. The next department is the hematology department. This is a department that looks at the blood itself and the blood-forming tissues. And so they will look specifically at the different types of blood cells. And so you have 3 different types of cells. The first one is the red blood cells. The medical name for those is erythrocytes. Their job is to carry oxygen through the bloodstream. And so the blood cells at the lungs picks up that oxygen, carries it around to the different parts of the body where it deposits it where it's needed. And then it picks up the waste product of carbon dioxide and brings it back to the lungs in order to get rid of it. The pigment that's on that red blood cell that makes that possible is called hemoglobin. When you don't have enough of that pigment, or you don't have enough red blood cells in general, or enough volume of blood, we say that you have a condition called anemia. And I'm sure that some of you have heard of that before. The next kind of blood cell is a white blood cell. The medical name for that is a leukocyte. You actually have 5 different types of leukocytes. If you can remember from when we did this chapter at the beginning of the year when we talked about all the different types of blood cells and stuff. There's 2 categories of white blood cells. You have the granulocytes that have little granules in their cytoplasm, and the agranulocytes that do not. The ones that end in "phil" are granulocytes, so the basophil, neutrophil, and eosinophil. And then the ones that end in "cyte" are the monocytes, and lymphocytes are the agranulocytes. Now, whether they're agranulocytes or granulocytes, doesn't matter what type, all the white blood cells, their job is to fight off infections. Some of them will produce antibodies so that it will remember a particular infection and then fight that infection if they would be exposed to that infection again. And then the third type of blood cell is a platelet. The medical word for which is thrombocytes. What their job is to help our blood clot. Now, the common test performed in hematology is the complete blood count. In lab terms, so to speak, we refer to that as the CBC. What they do is they look at how many red blood cells, how many white blood cells, how many platelets, how much hemoglobin, how much hematocrit, and all these different things. So even look at how many basophils versus neutrophils and so forth, and determine all of that into a laboratory study. The next department is the coagulation department. In smaller labs, like for instance Fulton County and even in Chambersburg when I worked over there, the coagulation department is part of the hematology department. But if you work in like a bigger lab or area, it may be separate. What this department does is tests that look at different blood clotting issues and how long it takes our blood to clot and so forth. It also monitors medications that people take to make sure that they don't clot, called anticoagulants. So some common tests that are done are the prothrombin time, or the PT, and that looks at, again, when they're taking this anticoagulant called Coumadin, typically is the one that they use it for. It's basically is seeing, how long the blood clots and if it's working or not. Another one is the activated partial thromboplastin time, or the APTT. Sometimes it's just called the PTT. And again, that's just seeing, the body's clotting ability and that kind of thing. And then the last department for today is the urinalysis department. In addition to running tests on blood, the lab can then of course run tests on urine specimens as well. So they'll look at the physical characteristics of the urine, color. Is it cloudy? When the urine is cloudy and we're looking at how cloudy it is, we are looking at its turbidity. We'll look at, is it yellow? Is it amber? Is it does it have no color? Is it brown? So all of those physical characteristics, they'll note those. They'll look at chemical things like glucose and bilirubin and protein and things like that. And then they'll also look at it under the microscope and see if there's anything present in the urine, maybe a stone or something else that should not be there. And then report those results so that the doctor can then use them to diagnose them with a problem or something like that. So that is it. That's half of the PowerPoint for today. On tomorrow or Monday, we will finish up the chapter, and so we will review on Tuesday and test on Wednesday. So I will see you guys then.